Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to a special adventure into reality. Today I am joined by Cory and Max. They are from AltMed Services and David from Unified Health System. We are talking about coronavirus, how to deal with it, how to prepare with it, how to go forward with it. We're going to be opening up to calls in just a little bit. But right now, I want to bring on Cory, David, and Max. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, Cory. How are you?
I'm doing good today. We are at a unique moment in history where 3 billion people are on lockdown. And I don't think anybody in the world ever expected 3 billion people to be on lockdown from one little novel coronavirus. So what I want to do is bring Cory in and have you talk about the coronavirus. You're a naturopath. And what have you been seeing in your cases, and what are some of the recommendations you want to give to people?
So am I on?
You are live.
Okay,
You are
good.
live. Tech problems. Look at that.
Well, I'm glad to know that I'm alive, but this morning I thought I was dead. First off, in my office, we use something called EDS, electrodermal screening, so we can determine if somebody has this virus very, very quickly. That gives us the option to do many different things. So far in my office, I have not tested anybody with the virus. We've had a few people that have been exposed to it, but are not actually active with the virus.
Mm-hmm.
We have found useful preventative, and that's something that I really like to address, is because most of the governments in the world are waiting for you to get sick to the point where that you need hospitalization, and then your chance of survival is very, very low. But if we go the other direction, kind of like when we have a car, we take our car in and get the oil changed and do maintenance ahead of time so that we don't have major breakdowns. There are all kinds of reasonable things that we can do in preventative. One of the things that we have been advocating is the cold weather berries. Elderberry being one of the best in that category, but any of the berries that are from a very cold climate, bayberry, barberry, wolfberry, lindenberry, all of those would have the benefit. What it does is it prevents the virus from attaching to our cell wall. And so even if we are exposed, that gives us a very good chance of defending ourselves. Now, once we have the virus, these berries aren't going to do much to help us. And so then Andreographis or some other herbs would make a huge difference. But I would still fall on the side of taking the precaution and letting your immune system fight in the early stages. What I've been told is once we get into the advanced stages, we need to do something intravenously. And even then, we don't need to do very scary things. The intravenous vitamin C appears to be enough. So we treat the blood. The blood pumps the blood to the heart, or from the heart to the lungs. The lungs are treated by the vitamin C, because if we try to do it from the other direction of inhalants or digestive, they're just not going to make the trip. So that's the short version of what I've been telling people. But my point of view is, why wait? Let's start defending ourselves before it's an issue. So that's the short version. If there's any other questions or comments, I'd be glad to field them.
Great. Now we move on to Max. What have you been noticing about the coronavirus in your work?
Well, it's very interesting that consistently for a month before the coronavirus was really in a place where we were put into a shutdown, everyone coming into the office had Lyme's. Consistently, there was no exceptions, and that with our EDS testing, we're able to find those co-infections, and they were very severe cases, but people had a very small amount of expressions. So it was very, very interesting. I found that it was consistent across the board, what we were finding. So we were putting on people in the hyperbaric chamber for oxygen therapy and doing a lot of red light, far infrared light therapy to get their whole system back online. And we do a lot of lymph work. And we found that most people were very plugged up in the chest cavity and the digestion. So it was showing up even before we knew that there was an issue with people coming in. So there's definitely some things happening, I believe, that are beyond what we're being told.
There are a lot of things we're being now told about. Thank you so much. I want to bring on David here. I want to talk about the EDS testing.
Mm-hmm. Well, the EDS testing is basically Cory and Maxine's province. But if you want to know what we're seeing in Corona, I concur with whatever they have said so far. It's about preventing the contracting of that disease as opposed to dealing with it. Actually, I believe that in just about everything, not just this particular illness. What I have seen a lot of, and there's a lot of things that people are not taking into consideration when you talk about that virus. Now, as a psychotherapist myself, I can tell you that there's a mental component. Yesterday, I received a very disturbing video of some guy jumping off of a building because of coronavirus. And there's a mental health aspect as well, which hasn't been discussed, and it's not being discussed specifically because it's not being discussed specifically because they don't have a clue. They really don't have a clue. I also want to take up a few other things that I wanted to as I said in the audience. This is not fear-mongering, but I believe that a lot of information was not made available to the public. When you say keep a 6-foot distance, that is dependent on the wind conditions around you and where you are at any point in time. The typical human healthy lung can expel droplets for about 6 feet, okay? More than that, depending on how healthy and how worked up you are. If there is a lot of wind around you, that 6 feet can become 20. It can become 100. This is a statement of fact. That is common sense. So for instance, if I was above you, a floor above you, and I sneezed, 6 feet makes no difference to what gravity has to say about it. These are the things that worry me when it comes to the coronavirus. These are the physical things. The mental health component worries me. Social distancing comes with its own brand of consequences, which will be felt years after. If you wanted to conduct an experiment, human beings are communal creatures. They tend to want to, this is why people are defying government orders and still congregating. And that's a very important point, because what we're seeing is that a lot of people can't be by themselves. The mental health component is directly interrelated to how an individual's immune system operates. Lack of connection with other human beings reduces your immunity. That's just a statement of fact. Okay, there's many studies that have been done on that. Okay, so there is that aspect, but I tend to want to err on the side of preventing the contraction of any kind of disease as opposed to having to deal with it afterwards. So overall, I can say that this virus has taught a lot of people a lot of things. It's even teaching the epidemiologists, right, that you can't predict what's going to happen. When you can't have an argument with a microbe. I said that in your last show. You can't have an argument. You can't tell it, we're on a schedule here, could you please behave? A microbe will do what it wants to do. And this new microbe that is out there has a quality about it that hasn't been seen since the bubonic plague, okay? Apart from the fact that you can't, the incubation period is dependent upon the immunity and the resistance of the individual, that makes it very difficult. That's why you see these draconian measures coming into play, because this disease is smart, for want of a better word. And I say smart not in the sense that it has consciousness and it's purposely trying to mess us up, but it's smart in the sense that it's really, really tiny in terms of physical size. And it depends on, it hits us where we live, human connection, where we live. A lot of diseases do that, but this disease, because of its dependence on the individual's immunity and lack thereof, makes it very difficult to ward off against when you're putting measures in place to keeping people away from each other. Okay, so I guess that's my 2 cents.
David, thank you so much. That's a lot of valuable information. Now I want to bring Cory here, and I want to talk about the mental health aspect and what people can do to maintain the mental health while they're in lockdown, and what are some of the preventative things that they can do, because when your mental health begins to fail, your immune system goes down also.
That's more of David's expertise than mine. The mental health issue is that we are critters that do well with other critters. And so if we isolate ourselves, we then become, we are sold this bill of sale on what would be the word, the anxiety, frustration, fear mongering. That's part of the underlying issue that I'm seeing, is that people are afraid of the unknown, afraid of the limited information that we've been given. So one of the ways that we're dealing with it in our office is we're trying to give a rounded picture of what's going on. So in the United States, almost 5 times the amount of people who have died from the COVID-19 died from influenza A, which then helps us to put it into a perspective that this is not scary. This is, so if 100 people were to get this COVID-19, 4 of them would die by the statistics. Approximately 30 of them would be quite sick. And the remainder, approximately 60%, would get well without having done anything. So when we look at it from that perspective, we need to realize that this is not as scary as we've been told. It does spread easy, there's no argument about that. But the majority, so just this morning in South Dakota, they were saying that 240 plus people have been proven to have it, which is a deceptive number because we haven't tested the whole population. So we don't know exactly how many have got it. And I believe it was 11 have died, but something in the neighborhood of 100 healed without doing anything. So understanding our enemy helps us to keep our mental balance. And then keeping our mental balance is useful in the idea that the 3 of us already have talked about preventive. Running around and being scared over unknown, we need to do something. And so just by our human nature, doing something helps us to keep balance. And so the preventative is a very good way to keep balance, keep families together. And so what have I been doing? Testing people, working, and playing on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yes. David or Max, do you guys want to add anything onto the mental health factor of what people can do to keep themselves in good spirits? Any supplements that they may want to take?
I think he's leading you on, Cory, to the gut-brain connection, and certainly, you know, working on your gut biome and making a healthy choice on what we're eating, and certainly, you know, being outside, you know, having that connection, you know, and I would suggest staying away from the computers and the Wi-Fi, because I do think there's a strong connection there. I've experienced it myself, and I think we're moving from chemtrails to other exposure. It's just kind of like 9/11 when you watch TV over and over and over the same information. There's an effect there. But if we truly go to a healthy diet, try and stay away from our pop and our processed foods, and go with the springtime type of diet, which is still warm foods, plenty of soups, and stay away from carbohydrates, a lot of our grains, and our, especially, excuse me, especially our milk products that plug up our lymphatic systems. I think we have a better chance. And sugars also feed this. So I'm a big advocate of diets, because that is the cheapest way we have to work on our holistic system. It's the cheapest way if you can find something in the grocery store.
Okay. I guess my 2 cents on that topic would be, well, mental health has always been very important to me. Half of a baby's immunity is when a baby's born. It's a combination of the mother's and the father's immune reactions. So now, where I allude to the mental health aspect is that stress by far will reduce your ability to fight off anything. It will also reduce your ability to think clearly, okay? Emotional stress. So when you're talking about social distancing, we have increasingly become a population where people see themselves through the eyes of another person. They don't see themselves as individual entities. So in Canada, and especially in communal areas like the Caribbean, you enact an order saying that we're doing social distancing, and people will resist, okay? They will resist. When you isolate them, a lot of people don't have the skills to cope with living with their own company. A lot of people don't have the skills to just live in the house with their families, okay? They experience boredom and so on, okay? So in the Caribbean, most of these islands are now on 24-hour lockdown, okay? 24-hour lockdown means that you have to stay in the house. You have to be with yourself all the time. That registers as stress to a lot of people. They can't slow down, especially in Toronto. I can tell you that there are a lot of people who are suffering being indoors. They are suffering, okay? And that shouldn't be the case. But what I was saying to people, you could look at this virus in two different ways. You could look at it in a positive outlook or a negative outlook. The positive outlook is there are a lot of people that are now practicing introspection. They have no choice. All the distractions have been taken away from them. The negative aspect is that if you don't practice introspection regularly, introspection becomes a pain for you. Now, how does it cross over into the physical aspect, you'll ask yourself? Well, quite simply put, we know that people who are stressed, they take longer times to recover from everything, whether it be from the flu to cancer, they take longer times. So there's a psychosomatic relation between how happy you are or how contented you are and how your immune reactions work, okay? The connection is in the endocrine system. And I think I'm going to leave that to Maxine and Cory, but I'm just going to deal with the mental health aspect. A lot of people do not like their own company. And I'm not talking about, I'm not talking about one or two people. I'm talking about millions of people cannot stand to be with themselves. And that is a big, big problem. I just want to give a few statistics here. So now we know for certain that this virus is killing the elderly more than it's killing younger people. Okay, WHO just released some statistics, and in Ontario, the head of the health ministry in Ontario has actually defied an order by Doug Ford to release actual statistics. I agree with Cory in the sense that becoming afraid is not going to help anybody. It's actually going to add more stress to your system. Okay, so it's self-defeating. But I think that what this virus has done is that it has hit us, as I said, where we live as communal creatures. Some of the measures that are taken, I look at with a little bit of, it's a little bit of circumspect. This is a new virus. We know that people's immunity, the only reason you got whatever age you are, that you got sick and you recovered. Do you understand where I'm coming from? You got sick and you recovered, okay? If you ran away from everything when you were young and you got sick as an adult, it would be the end of the world for you, okay? Certainly there's a preventative aspect of it, but I'm a little bit circumspect when it comes to trying to avoid everything. Be careful with that, because if you try to avoid everything, you have no resistance to anything. You must fall down to get back up. The immune system is like that, okay? It learns. And I will dare say a properly functioning immune system, is a lot smarter than you give it credit for. I really think that. Okay, Max, I don't know if you want to add to that, or Cory, you can jump in here.
I'll just say this. One of the key things that Cory builds health with is digestion. It is the basis. And I'd like him to say more about that, since it's his practice for over 38 years. And this is no exception for what we're dealing with here.
So for those that don't know, Max is my wife. She is also my interpreter.
She reads the tea leaves for you?
And other interesting things.
Karnak says.
So I started studying with the old timers, people that learned their nutrition in the early 1900s, back when we were not fractionizing everything and breaking things down into the smallest pieces possible. And so from that training, I was taught that if you can't digest, if you can't feed the body, it doesn't do any good to put high potency vitamins or minerals into the body if the basic digestion isn't present. So this is American Sign Language for I love you. And what it means is thumbs up is always digestion. Then we have transportation. Then we have elimination. If we do those three things well enough, we can say I love you. And so when it comes to having the body's ability to defend itself on the very basic physical level, the other three of you understand the psyche and the other aspects as well. But the very basic physical level requires food. And if we don't feed the body real food, it's not going to work. I've got a book here, 2,000 Food Additives Explained, produced in the United States, banned in the United States. I had to travel to Canada to get it. The basic concept is there are hundreds, if not thousands of things added to our food that have never been studied. And so we are doing live studies now. And some of the studies are skewed in that they want to prove something. So even the multiple vitamins that many people take are made from petroleum. The human body does not have a petroleum deficiency. We have vitamin deficiency, mineral deficiency, enzyme deficiencies. And all of these physical aspects come from feeding the body what it needs. So in going to the grocery store here in town and just observing all the center of the grocery store, the canned foods, the frozen foods, and toilet paper, all disappeared. The outside of the store where the fresh produce was held was intact most of the time. And they only went to that when the frozen food and the canned food was gone. And those of us that have any nutritional intelligence know that we should have been going for the fresh produce. We have to feed the body if we want it to defend itself. So now once we fed it, Max talked about lymphatic, it's our garbage trap. And so when we have an internal fight going on, we produce waste. And that's the lymph system's responsibility, is to move that waste out of the vital organs. In moving that waste, if we're healthy enough, the lymphatic system will recycle things for us. The recycling makes it easier to defend ourselves. But if we don't have basic raw nutrition there, we can't rebuild, we can't repair. The comment about the immune system being more intelligent and more vital, that, in my opinion, depends on if it's fed. So like an army, you can't send them out to battle if there's no weapons. And so our immune system has to be fed, and your point was well taken in that it needs to be exercised. We need microbes, we need viruses and stuff to strengthen us. And so if we've isolated ourselves over the years, we have little to no immune response. If we've used drugs over the years to produce our fight, we have little or no inherent immune system. In my opinion, if we've used vaccines to defend ourselves, we have no inherent ability to fight. So this virus is not nearly as scary as they are telling us. Let our immune system do the fight. Provide it the raw nutrition, the elderberry or other cold berries, Andreographis as an herb, even simple echinacea has a factor in this.
Okay, I think a lot of the responses to COVID-19 have less to do with an issue of health and more to do with an issue of economics than anything else. And Alex, Audrey, you want me to get into that? I think I should probably get into that. Okay, so
it's vitally important that people understand the economics of what's going on here, because health and wellness and economics don't often jive.
Oh, they absolutely do not jive at all.
Right, exactly.
Because I've worked in the health industry from the administrative point of view and from the clinical point of view. I've worked on both sides. And I can tell you from the economic side point of view, when you are creating a health system, it doesn't matter what the health system is. You could have a mom and pop shop somewhere in the middle of doing massage therapy, or you could have a major hospital. Health systems run like cogwheels. You take any money out of a health system, any money whatsoever, and then the health system begins to fail. It's just that simple. We tried since the after the World War II, we initiated a kind of Lean Six Sigma approach to health. Okay, and I'll explain what that means. It means everything there's no waste in the health system. They try to do that. Here's a problem. Health systems must depend on contingencies. That's what they used to do. We don't do that now. That is a statement of fact. And I know this because I've had to actually argue this point more than once. So as an example, you want to know why Italy's health system is overwhelmed? It is because every patient that contracts this illness, they want to initiate an isolation protocol, which means more people, more staff in the hospital, more equipment is used because you want to keep that person away from other people. Do you, are you understanding how that works?
Totally.
Okay, so if you have to give special consideration to everyone who contracts it and the illness has a huge spread rate, what you're going to have is a health system that is overwhelmed, where you will have people not dying from the illness, but dying from the fact that they can't get medical attention. There's a big difference there. So we have a inherent problem in health in the world today because they tried to lean out a health system. When you hear any government saying we're going to take budget cuts to a health system, you have to become very worried. Because I know a lot of people watch the news and they hear, oh, we're going to cut the health budget by this month, we're going to cut this budget by this month. They never know that until they're on a gurney being wheeled into a hospital and having to wait 5 hours to see someone. That's what it means to you. That's exactly what it means to you. And so with this virus, it has taught a lot of people a lot of things. When you lean out a health system, the chances of it becoming overwhelmed increase exponentially. And we're seeing this playing out in real life right now. So a lot of these health systems, a lot of people will die, not because necessarily of the virus itself, but they will die because they can't breathe. Nobody's doing anything about it, so they're going to die. And I think
combined with the big pharma's over medication of everyone.
Now, you see, when this started, they said everyone that ibuprofen is not helpful. Yeah, it isn't helpful. Okay, so you know what? They don't tell you the other part. So everybody's going to run to acetaminophen. That's not a good idea either.
Mhm.
Okay, when you are making statements, and I get the feeling that they're a little bit frantic. This is the first time we've seen a health system, and I mean from the World Health Organization down to your local premier or health minister, into frantic mode. They went into a frantic mode. They didn't know. All right, so they come on television and they're like the Iranian health minister. You remember him?
Oh, yeah.
What happened to that Iranian health minister?
He's dead.
Yeah, he is. They didn't know what to do. They were caught off guard. They didn't have contingencies. The best contingency is an educated population. The best contingency in the health system is an educated population that knows how to protect itself and knows protocols. If I ask your audience right now, anybody watching this broadcast, what are World Health Organization's protocols for a pandemic? How many of them do you think will answer me and
None.
know what I'm talking
Most
about?
of them, 99% will have no idea.
You know, a lot of people don't know what social distancing is. I've been reading the news. They don't know what it means because it might change from day to day, and it has changed. It's certainly in Canada from province to province. Social distancing means something different. Probably, as Cory and Maxine have been trying to explain throughout this broadcast, the best defense against a pandemic is an educated population. It really is. Know how to eat, know how to exercise, know how to sleep well, right? And know that when something is transpiring like this global pandemic, keep a cool head, look after yourself and look after the people around you. But I do think that this COVID-19 has taught a lot of people a lot of things, from the politicians to the health ministers to the businessmen who figured that the virus was on their time.
Yeah, it's on their it's on their payroll.
Yeah, the virus is not on your payroll. It's like, yeah, you can't fire the virus. Okay, you were good. And you know what? You know what's actually quite funny about that? If you are a pharmaceutical company right now, you are very pissed off. And I'll tell you why. Because illness is your life's blood, right? You need people to get sick to sell them drugs. Okay. However, if you don't have the right drugs to sell them, then this illness is not of any benefit to you whatsoever, because you don't have a vaccine and you don't have a cure. So you can't capitalize on it. So that's where capitalism falls down. Because if I worked for a pharmaceutical company, I'd be like, crap, where did this come from? So everybody's learning their lessons. Everybody is.
Well, I'll add something to that, as a society, most of our clients are used to coming in and they want quick results. So sometimes we're the last resort when they show up and they want faster results. And we have to explain that good health is a lifestyle. You can't just suddenly, in a pandemic situation, just plug in and go, oh, I have good health now. And you're good to go. It takes time. And you have to build up those resources just like you do money or any other resource that we have. And we typically see that people rely a lot on antibiotics. We have seen a connection between antibiotics and C. diff. C. diff is kind of like the sludge in your gut that is undigested and mutations that have not really been taken care of. And from that, you have a wonderful place for all of these pathogens to live. And that really leverages a whole host of things that can happen. If you have a pathology and it just keeps growing, you have friends that join in. And it's a consistent thing that we see. And we often find those people more susceptible to other bigger diseases that have bigger names. So really we're dealing with the pathological as well as the pathology that go hand in hand, but there is a load level. So that all stems from the gut. And of course, this is a virus, so viruses don't respond to antibiotics, but we have so many things that are to our disposal that really can help. One of the things that we do is screen people so that we can work with them to handle that pathological and pathology load in our gut. And so we're addressing both things at the same time. And it would be great if we could just say flat across the board that this digestive enzyme or this prebiotic is really going to help you, but it doesn't work that way. Each person is an individual and how they store things, how they respond to things. And that's why we're really blessed with having a system like electrodermal screening that works off of a computer that can actually tell you in the moment, in real life time, what's happening with your body and what you need to do to build it back up. And then you add some experience, like 38 years with Cory, and he's been a great teacher. So I've been with Ultimate Services for 2 years. I've worked with different techniques for over 25 years. And on my health, my whole lifetime, which we'll say has been quite a long time. And the pathology and the pathogens are one and the same. These critters have an attitude, they have an expression that you can feel. And like when Cory says, when you close your eyes at night, are you really alone? That is a huge truth in that.
One of the things that I've observed over the years, I got invited to speak to a group of medical doctors, and one particular doctor was harassing me throughout the whole lecture with objections to my style of medicine. And he made the comment, he said, I really don't have a problem with your type of medicine other than you fix things before they're problems. And I said, So what is your point? And he says, well, that would cause a collapse to the whole medical system in that we fix things when they are problems. And so I told him that I would answer every one of his questions if he would answer one of mine first. And my question was, when was the last time that you drugged somebody to health? And that's the whole premise of Western medicine, is we go after a problem. And so with Max's help, we have a expression at the office: alt-med does not chase a disease, we build health. And if you build health, your chances of getting disease is very minimal. And so even with this virus, defend yourself. Get yourself in a position where that you can fight off. The cold climate berries are extremely good for this, in that they will help prevent the virus from attaching to our cells. And so the distancing and such is going to have repercussions for a long time. Dealing with your comment, David, on the economics, I believe there is a underlying agenda that we have not seen or identified, because literally if we all lose our finances and we lose our house, we lose our offices, if all of this goes, what are we left with? Either communism or a socialistic state, where that we will now lose all of our choices. And so I personally believe, got really no evidence, but I personally believe that there's a larger agenda affecting not just the United States, Canada, but the whole world. Everybody is losing.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's actually a very good point he has just made there. Now, here's the, I'm going to dredge up my law background here. So, according to the World Health Organization, a country should theoretically be able to enact emergency powers in the event of a serious threat to national security, the national security of human life. Okay. We had, in an island with 285,000 people, we had 27 confirmed cases. Emergency powers were enacted. A lot of people don't know what that means. There are a number of, we need to be educating the audience. So I want to start from the beginning. There's a difference between bacteria and a virus. Bacteria and viruses are not the same thing. Okay, because I want to pick up from a point that Maxine has just said. I'll circle back to the point I was making. Bacteria and viruses are not the same thing. You can't just decide that I'm going to swallow a whole bunch of antibiotics and everything will be fine. Do not self-medicate under any circumstances. That would be an error. That would be just a complete error, okay? Bacteria are living organisms, okay? Viruses are smaller and they invade your cells and they can do lots of damage, right? So bacteria, you just need to find a way of dealing with them. Viruses are a little bit different than that, okay? They're still microorganisms, but a lot of people tend to use those words interchangeably when they don't know the difference, okay? So now we have a virus on our hands, okay? And it's not, as Cory said, something that is debilitating. It definitely is not the bubonic plague, okay? If we had the bubonic plague now, we would have a problem, okay? So I wanted to make a distinction where that is concerned. I also wanted to take on the legal aspect as well. A lot of people don't understand what rights the government has under certain circumstances. Let me inform you of what rights the government has. If emergency powers are given to a government in an emergency situation, it literally means the government is now God. Is that something you can understand?
Yeah. It's what they're trying to do. It's what they're trying to do with these medical acts to get power back to the government here too.
So what it means is that in an emergency situation, all your personal possessions are at the discretion of the government. This is not a joke. You don't have to believe me. You just need to read the law. So if the government tells you to stay at home, you need to stay at home. Okay, because emergency powers, it means emergency powers. In the Caribbean, in Ontario and Canada, I'm going to speak for these two jurisdictions because they're the ones I'm most familiar with. Emergency powers means that you can see someone's house, someone's vehicle, right? I can turn your house into a shelter for COVID-19 patients. I can do that. That's what emergency powers means. Now, they're not supposed to be abused, but they are part of the law. And a lot of people don't seem to understand that. Okay. And you guys need to understand this. So may I make a suggestion? So, so may I make a suggestion with regard to what people are saying? Please obey the emergency orders, because what is going to happen is that these measures are going to become more and more draconian if you don't. I'm just talking from the legal aspect. I also want to talk another issue from the legal aspect. The pharmaceutical companies. I'm a little bit worried about rushing any vaccine. I'm very, very worried about that. There are regulations that have to be put in place before you put any drug to the market. If you relax these regulations, you're also relaxing the possibility that people can get quite dead if they take your drug. And then you have an argument in law that says, well, it was an emergency situation. We were trying to help the situation. Be very careful with that stuff. I want to say this because this is a warning that people don't understand. A lot of people don't know what goes into getting a drug approved for market. And even those measures are very lax, and people don't understand that. They depend on money. So the barrier to a pharmaceutical company putting a drug on the market is money. Literally, it costs $50 million to bring a whole global drug to market. It costs $50 million minimum, okay? But for a pharmaceutical company like, let's say, Pfizer, that's like a drop in the hat, right? Because we're going to pay that, right? What I'm trying to explain to you, the barriers of the FDA are not in terms of the measures, it's in terms of the money. There's a difference, okay? Or else you wouldn't have drugs being recalled from the shelves constantly.
David, I also want to add, there are not enough bioreactors in all the pharmaceutical companies to produce one type of vaccine out there. Example, in the early 80s when HIV came out, they took them 10 years just to figure out really what it was. And then they discovered that, what was it? The shingles virus was starting to go crazy on everyone also. And they decided to create an antibody, not a vaccine for it. But the amount of people that are having that, it's going to take another 6 years to build the massive bioreactors. So a lot of the vaccines are created through eggs. They actually inject the virus through an egg and they extract it back out. There actually isn't the technology to produce 10 billion doses.
No, there isn't. Man, that's you're dealing with economies of scale. So the rich will survive and the poor will die. It's just basic economics. I'm sorry to give you the harshness of economics.
Well, that's if you even believe in the fact that vaccinations actually work. I mean, let's put it this way. In the old days, such as, we all know shingles is related to chickenpox, mothers would expose their kids to chickenpox with having kids next door share it with the other kids, and that's how they would get the antibodies to deal with it instead of getting a vaccination. Now, that means you have to have a kid that has a pretty good immune system to handle it. But when you have isolation and you can't be around the people that have recovered from COVID-19, we're missing on an opportunity there to build that positive side of it.
This is a lot of common sense stuff, Maxine. If you're a kid, And it's playing out in society as well. If you're a kid, you fall down, you get back up, you fall out of trees. How many of us fell out of swings? All right, we got back up. I'm sure a lot of us got back up. Some of us didn't get back up very well, but our bodies learn to adapt to the pressure. What is happening right now is that we have changed the adaptation process from one of natural processes to one of drug processes, right? All right. So you have people literally adapting to antibiotics. You know, people have taken so many antibiotics, they have to keep increasing the strength of antibiotics. Okay. And what you have is people who have taken a lot of them, antibiotics mean nothing to them anymore. It's of no use to them. And that is a statement of fact. Your body literally adapts to the antibiotics that are being given if you keep using them, and if you keep using them, okay, they lose effectiveness.
There's research that shows that the Z-Pak type of antibiotics are actually carcinogen. So where are we putting ourselves?
So one other thing I want to touch on vaccines. When measles was destroying the world in the 50s, mumps, rubella, they came out with a vaccine back then that destroyed a lot of lives because the technology was unproven.
Yeah.
It destroyed a lot of lives. Now, in the 70s, they put out another vaccine that destroyed a lot of lives again. And now they have it where by the time you're 7 years old, you've had 22 vaccinations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still an unproven science that won't publish its effectiveness rate. Yet measles sort of disappeared in our world. Sort of. Mumps, rubella sort of disappeared. Let me finish real quick. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't necessarily because of the vaccine, because of the human herd processing.
Honestly, Andrew, it's about the economics.
Yep.
It breaks down to the economics. And I know a lot of you who are watching this broadcast don't understand the power of economics, because a lot of people have rose-colored glasses who believe that human life should trump economics, but that's not actually how it works. It just isn't. I'm sorry to say. Economics is about supply and demand. Okay? You don't want to die, I will sell you something. You will pay whatever I want you to pay. Okay? So we had a lot of horror shows, and a lot of people don't understand these things. So I'm going to have to give examples so that people understand what I mean by that. And this is real world examples. Robert, if you're gonna do, I'm just gonna throw some stuff out there. Could you please Google Bayer CEO says that his drugs are for people who can pay and not for Indians.
Yep.
You remember that? You remember that case? I think I said that on a.
We did it on the show before.
Yes, he came out and he says that we don't want anybody reverse engineering our solutions because it's for people who can pay. And he said that in an international forum. Okay, you have the head of Nestle saying that water is not a human right. This is the thinking that you are dealing with. But let's throw it out there. The drug Trovan in Nigeria, you remember I said that on your last show? The drug Trovan in Nigeria, they were literally testing. They were literally testing those drugs on people in the third world to see whether they worked or not, because they wouldn't try it out on people in the Western world for fear of being sued, because the people in the third world couldn't sue them, but the people. So there is an economic aspect to what you are seeing, everything you are seeing. And if you miss that economic aspect, this is about the money. And you're thinking, well, they wouldn't do that. I mean, human life hangs in the balance. And I suggest to you that you're probably very naive, or you're not reading very well, okay? So there is that aspect. But with regard to this thing that is happening, this COVID-19, part of me is conflicted where that is concerned, because with this thing that is happening now, everybody loses. Everybody loses. The only people who are making money are the people who are keeping the supply chain alive. These are the people who are making a lot of money, okay? The doctors are dying, okay? Because they're not taking care of themselves, because they're overwhelmed. And as I keep saying to people, the best defense in a society is when the population is educated, they know what to do, they know how to take care of themselves. Cory just said something about having a good having good digestion. A lot of people don't know how to promote that in themselves. Maxine was saying something a little earlier on about the antibiotics and so on. People don't know these things. They just don't. And it's up to the government theoretically to educate people. And we have had a lot of failings on that all over the world. Now, whether that is deliberate, that's another issue, huh? But I tend to think it is deliberate because, honestly speaking, you pay for what you don't know. That is a statement of fact. Okay. I don't know if you guys want to chime in here.
So it's real quick. If you are listening on the YouTube page or the Facebook page and you want to be able to call in and ask questions, you have to join the Zoom meeting room. So if you go to Zoom, https://zoom.us, and the meeting ID is 911-001-1974. And that will allow you to enter the room, and then you'll be able to raise your hand. And we're going to be taking questions here from the audience that are in the Zoom room. So if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube, come on into the Zoom room. We'll leave this information up there for people. And then we're going to talk a little bit, and then we're going to take some questions from the live audience. We also have the dial-in phone numbers over here on the right of the screen. So even if you don't want to do that, you actually want to dial in from US, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, same ID number, 911-001-1974. All right, guys, let's delve into some deep subject matters like we have before relating to health, wellness, and then we're going to open up to some calls.
I'd like to make a comment. Cory and I have been watching the reports, and the schools that are 100% vaccinated, in some cases, are the ones that are having outbreaks on the very pathogens that they've been vaccinated against. So that tells us that we could be spreading it instead of doing the opposite of building an immunity or whatever it's supposed to build.
That journey into vaccination is one of those just deceptive journeys that has been going on for a very, very long time. And at some point, we'll do a show on the deceptions of the vaccines and the stabilizing agents such as thimerosal in there that causes its own set of destructive journeys to it. But the people that are being vaccinated and there's so much of what they're showing up, like the human papilloma virus and the cervical cancer stuff that they're trying to do, and they're trying to get 9-year-olds to get another vaccination, and yet they can't actually publish anything in their public papers that shows the effectiveness of stopping it. Just like when you go to get the flu vaccine, it has a 6% effectiveness rate. 6.
I have to chime in here. I'm sorry. In order for you to publish a paper in any medical journal, you have to have statistics, correct?
Right.
The problem with a vaccine is that you need to inject it into someone to know that it works. So injecting it into one person and saying, "Oh, it helped that person and it gave that person resistance," is not a statistic. Okay, so you have to inject it into a lot of people. You understand what I'm saying? All right. So at what point in time does it become ironclad that this vaccine works? That's the next question you got to ask yourself. 100 people, 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people. You don't know. Okay. So whenever people talk to me, because I've had lots of arguments with doctors, academic doctors, academically inclined doctors who publish papers, and I have a problem with statistics when it comes to health. Because what I keep saying, COVID-19 is the virus that keeps on giving. Because all your statistical and scientific methods just went out the door with this virus. Your statistical modeling goes out the door. Because if you look at exponential infection rates. That thing just taught you that even if you put people in their house, it's still going to spread. Okay, it's teaching you that lesson. Okay, right? If you're talking about publishing medical data and you say, okay, we're going to publish a data based on, and you use very fancy words so people don't understand you, but what you really try to say is, I need to inject a lot of people so that I can tell myself that I'm on the right track. Okay, so you have a whole, look, the whole process of drug approval is based, it doesn't matter what it is based on the fact that our drug works for a lot of people. In order to do that, I need to inject it with a lot of people. So they've been beta testing drugs on a market, which is wrong, which is just wrong. Okay, so what they do in law to cover themselves, and I'm giving people this information, is the following. When I air a commercial for a drug that I'm not sure works for everybody, it might kill a few people, but hey, you know, based on demand and supply, the majority is going to win. Okay, if I market a drug, I must list the side effects. It may cause stuff like you may lose all your hair.
You may die. You may die.
But yes, but one of the side effects, if you ever listen to the, I mean, do you listen to?
Yes, I do.
These commercials. One is the new side effects that they're putting in may cause sudden death. It may cause sudden death. Well, that's a problem, right? Because if it may cause sudden death, maybe I shouldn't be taking it, right? But that's actually one of the side effects in a lot of these drugs, and they put it in the small print. So what they do is they show people having wonderful, this is marketing, this is advertising. I could give you the business aspect. They show some grandmother playing with their kids and so on. And in a little snippet, in 5 seconds, they tell you, may cause the following things in really fast, okay? Really, really fast. And you need to slow down the commercial to hear it may also cause sudden death. So, you know, it's a crapshoot. If you take it, you may live. You take it, you may die. But, you know, don't worry. At least we know it works for a lot of people. It's a comedy of errors. And actually, what I wanted to do is actually get one of these commercials, and probably, Robert, one of these days you could play it so that people could actually hear our drug may cause sudden death. Okay, because it's actually quite funny to listen to. But as I said, what is happening right now is COVID-19 is the gift that keeps on giving. It made all the statistical and scientific models go out, walking out the door. Because if you think nature is going to be waiting for you to tell it what's scheduled to be on, you'd be incorrect. It's just not going to do that. So that is my 2 cents where that is concerned. Also, I wanted to say one more thing with regard to vaccinations. They're looking at possibly making vaccination as a mandatory law. Are you aware of this?
Yes, mandatory and attached to your passport. You can't travel without your passport and showing you've had a COVID-19 vaccination. And they're already starting to put it as in the law here in the United States and in Europe.
Well, they're going to have a fight on their hands to try to pass it, but I suspect it will pass eventually. And if they pass that, the precedent will be set to pass vaccination legislation across the board.
First, they have to finish the financial crimes against humanity, and then they'll enforce the medical crimes against humanity. And at that point, it'll be about what humanity itself is going to do and go, hey, no more. Because they're trying to save the economy before humans first.
Yes, this is true. It's about the money.
It is about the money. All right, so if you are new to the room, you just saw the information of how to join the room, and you want to ask a question to our panel here, all you do is click on the participants button, click on the 3 dots and say, raise your hand. And that will put you into the pool of selecting the opportunity to asking questions. So Max or Cory, do you guys want to add anything to the vaccination or health topics we've been talking about?
I do. And Cory, if you want to jump in on the vaccination before I change the shift of a point of view here just a little bit, go for it.
There's a lot to be said about vaccines, and my point of view is I'd like to live a few more days. So I don't want to get too aggressive in saying how bad they are, how destructive they are. One of the things that I view on the vaccine that hits me the most is the lack or the stealing choice from us. If somebody wants a vaccine, I would have a hard time arguing with them to not take a vaccine. If you want the vaccine, go get it. But the point that we're just talking about with the passports and stuff, they're taking our choices away from us. We should have the body integrity to be able to determine what our own body should be fed with, be defended with. And I resent the idea that this choice is being taken from me.
Yeah.
Good
Right.
point.
And the choice of you, like a lot of children can't go to school without vaccinations. You can't get an education without it. That's more choices being taken away from you.
So go ahead, Max.
I have been paying attention to some of the reports that the COVID-19 is actually showing up in people that have been isolated. There is supposedly no reason that they should be coming down with it. So the joke that this one presenter put out there was that perhaps it's raining from the sky. I think he was talking about chemtrails. Now, if chemtrails are part of the airplanes flying over and we have less airplanes flying, then what are the other options? Some people are questioning 5G because it has more bandwidth. That means there's more potential for more information in its complete, say, holographic form to be projected. There's been theory since the 50s that there's a lot of programming that has been put through not only the TV, but telephones and pretty much all the progression of technology since, including the internet. Well, if you're following that track, then I'm adding to the question of what Mr. Bill has done, that he is pretty much the key source in every single Intel chip of the processor in every computer, not just Windows, not just Linux and the other platforms, but Apple also. So he has them all, the last time I heard. So there is also rumor that he actually has a patent on the virus and is a big advocate of vaccinations. Now, this is all hearsay, but it is an interesting form of logic. And if 5G is creating cellular destruction where the calcium actually gets clogged up in the cells until it explodes, there is some health concerns here on many levels. So if we isolate ourselves and hug our technology, it's kind of an interesting issue. From a 5-element acupuncture standpoint, Chinese medicine, the virus affects the lungs. The lungs are considered part of the metal meridian, and technology as computers and such are part of the metal element. And then you also have grief as part of the emotional aspect. It's interesting that they all pull together. I'm not making factual statements, I'm just raising questions.
And in the raising of those questions, we get another question within a question within a question is, why are children, why is it not showing up and yet showing up in children? I'm going to put my 27 cents in here, a quarter and 2 pennies. And it's going to start with, we know now the first sets of cases were in October last year.
Mm-hmm.
If you reset the timeline, October, you have over 500,000 Asian students who come to the United States in October. Okay, long before they come to the United States for what? Education. And then you have the Chinese visitation journeys, which are different things. So it's spread all around the world in probably 3 weeks, and from October all the way into November. And then the serious sets of cases started showing up in China. But the children, I think, have had a good dose of it already and have built up their own herd immunity far faster than the adults who have compromised immune systems, where any old serious flu can take them down. Now, this is more than a serious flu. This is something that is obviously causing deaths. People are dying, okay, at a 2% rate, which is in the normal flus at a 1% rate. But it's also the people who are heavily pharmacopoeiaed out of their mental existence, people on heavy amounts of depression medicines. They're also beginning to have very tough times with this social distancing, as well as getting the virus itself. All right, so we're going to open up to calls now for the new people that are in the room. If you want to have a question and be able to talk to the panel, click on the participants button and you'll be able to raise your hand, and that's who we will select. All right, Robert, let's spin up the wheel of callers and see who the first caller is.
Alrighty, our first caller will be Jonathan Martinez. You're unmuted with the group.
Jonathan, are you there?
Hey guys, yes, I'm here.
Hi, where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from Huntsville, Alabama.
Hi, we've talked many times. So what is it you want to talk to the panel about today?
Well, I guess on the topic of COVID, whenever it first showed up in my reality, I was in jail, actually. I spent 40 days in jail, and I saw it come up on the news. And the first thing I thought of was, okay, we'll see how our rights kind of get manipulated through this. And then I heard how they shut down travel from China to here, and I was like thinking who that might benefit. Although I do feel like this is something that wasn't necessarily planned to manipulate people, but I think it can be tapped into by the powers that be very easily, and I see it kind of around here. We're not in a full shutdown, but they say everybody stay in your houses. So.
It's only a matter of time before we see a full shutdown here.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering about that. And then also about a week after I found out about the virus in my reality, I got sick for about a week. And this was while I was in jail. I had it was almost like a strep throat thing. And I rarely get sick. Like I've been sick maybe twice in the last 4 years. And then I've thought about that too, because maybe it has been around like longer than people have said. Like maybe it has already gotten here to the United States, and we're going through our own process of who's immune and who's not, and what's going to happen.
Okay. Any other questions you want to ask the panel?
I want to speak. I want to say something to that.
Yeah.
How the West was won. That's not just a reference to the movie. He made a very good point there. If I wanted to disrupt something, guess what I would do? I would keep that virus alive. I would. The reason why I say how the West was won, a lot of it was won through blankets. Everybody thinks it was won through guns. It was won by giving people blankets. And does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yes, smallpox. Smallpox, exactly.
Okay, you give blankets full of smallpox to people who are not, who have never seen smallpox and never had it, and you're gonna erase a problem. It's the basic form of biological warfare. Okay, a lot of people have a false idea of American history, and that was actually used. It was used quite a bit, a lot more than people care to remember. Mm-hmm. Smallpox blankets.
There are a lot of big organizations that are already trying to begin the lawsuits against China right now for releasing the COVID-19 on the world, and that they knew much earlier, and the facts that they were buying personal protective equipment and biohazard and drugs before they did their lockdown, like as much as early in December and November and December.
You cannot sue a member of the Security Council in the UN. There are
Oh, I know.
five nations.
I know
You
that,
just can't.
but they're trying to begin that journey to figure out how, because there's a law firm in Florida that is beginning a class action lawsuit. All right, Robert, let's spin up the next caller and see who the next caller is.
All righty, the next caller is Filipa. You're unmuted with everybody.
Filipa, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Where are you calling from today?
Saint-Malo in France.
Saint-Malo, France. Welcome to the show. What do you have to ask the questions to the panel today?
Hi. Well, I've got a few questions. One is, do we get immunity if we have it, if we get it? Or is that a movable feast?
Well, well, I've been following the data on it. We don't know. It's new. So you don't know whether you get immunity from it, but it's not likely, or else they wouldn't be that frightened of it. Okay, what does that mean, immunity? You mean immunity from getting it again? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Is there any way of preparing the body before we, like, for example, if there are any negative aspects of a vaccine that come, can we prepare the body before we get the vaccine?
No, vaccines don't actually work like that. You use the actual illness to reverse engineer, but it's a diluted form of the illness, okay? So saying that you have while you're going in reverse there, you're concerned about a reaction to the vaccine. But the vaccine is a step-down version of the actual illness. There's a lot of other stuff in it that you definitely will not be immune to. Okay, you understand? So a lot of people, the instances, the examples that Andrew was referring to, the vaccines against rubella, it wasn't rubella that hurt these people, you know, that destroyed these people's lives. It was the other stuff that was used to make the vaccine that destroyed these people's lives, okay? So you have to be very careful when you're talking about that, because honestly, if you're talking about a reaction to a vaccine is just not, it's not just the actual illness. You have to put things in there to actually make that vaccine work inside the human body and work in a particular way. You also have to put, how should I put it? You have to also put, manipulate that illness in such a way that it doesn't replicate as it normally would. So you could actually have reactions to chemicals inside a vaccine without actually having a reaction to the actual illness itself. So I need to correct you there on that. With regard
I guess I was wondering if we couldn't get immunity from it by getting it.
Yeah, I was about to answer that question. There's not enough time. You have to understand this started in October. To make conclusive evidence, you could publish whatever paper you want right now, okay? And that paper will be circumspect because they need this thing to be over really quickly, so they're concentrating on that. To say that people develop an immunity to it if you have it is a bit early, because they're not quite sure what that thing is. They're not. They have an idea of what it is, right? But they're not sure. Like, I'm sure you know that some viruses can mutate. They can create different strains of themselves. They're not sure what it is. There's not enough time. This started in October. We are now in, what, April? And they're just not quite sure what's going on.
Jump in here?
Yeah, sure.
A couple pieces. The COVID virus is actually a family, is known as 7 different families. And one of the things that, like SARS and some of those other well-known family members have done is that they'll come out for a while and then they'll come back. And sometimes like in January, there's speculation that there was a flu that some people had that was affecting the lungs, and it was tough to get rid of. You'd think you'd get rid of it, and then you'd feel better, and then the symptoms would come back. And we know of flus that have done that in the past. They're just hard to get rid of completely. So this could be the case with this family member, the COVID-19. So you want to be prepared that any virus, they say, takes more than a month to completely get rid of it through your body. So don't be quick to jump back into the saddle of, putting your body into stress and situations that you're normally not taking care of yourself as much as you normally would, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And on a side note, we had a vaping incident here in the United States where 5,700 kids had major lung damage, which they thought was from vaping, which could be from something else for all we know. All right, so we're going to move on to the next caller. All right, Robert, spin up the next caller and see who's next.
Okie dokie. Next caller is Joseph. You're unmuted.
Joseph, are you there?
Oh, wait, they don't have a mic symbol. How about Joyce? You're unmuted with everybody.
Joyce, are you there?
Oh my goodness, I did not know my hand was raised, but hello everyone. Thank you.
Hello, where are you calling? Where are you calling?
You're here.
Where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from New York, north of
New
New
York.
York City.
Welcome to the show. What questions do you have for the panel here?
Wow. Questions for the panel. Thank you, Philippa, for your question about the immunity once the virus is contracted. But it is all unknown. We're in an unknown situation, and it's been such a roller coaster for so many people. I guess my question, let me grab my pad from questions from last week. Can I ask an esoteric question?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. So now this virus, I know it is reaching people that are immunosuppressed, whether it be from emotions, not eating right, taking medications. Andrew, I remember you saying there's also a karmic attribute to this virus. Can we go a little further into depth about that?
Well, we must understand the nature of karma first.
Okay.
Karma is a debt, owed, received, weighed on. Karma can be perceived in many different ways. And this virus is going to be attracted like a magnetic resonance to those that have the karma of resolution or retribution. Whether it's from low mental health, incapacity to make positive choices, whatever it is, the resonance self is the attractor factor of this virus through the vehicle of spiritual karma. Now, no matter what perception you come from, the perspective of karma is one of those things that can be philosophically debated over and over and over again, and it can be debated to the end of time, but it will not define why X person gets it versus X person gets it, other than karma is a form of retribution and resolution for unresolved issues. And a novel coronavirus has come out of nowhere to create what? A balance. So it is a balancing factor of karma that all sicknesses and diseases have a karmic value to it. This one is just happening to come out at a time and affecting the stinky underbelly of our medical community, revealing how ineffective it really is.
Yes. And was this the missing piece for a great many people to bring the world into alignment and to propel ourselves into activation and awakening?
So if you've listened to me for a while, nothing's going to awaken you but yourself.
Okay.
And all this means is there is fertile ground for you to grow and plant seeds in yourself now.
Mm.
There is a good planting season during COVID-19 for you to eat healthy, have mental health, understand spiritual hygiene, begin to advance yourself into normal learning, and disregard and put away curiosity learning. Curiosity learning is one of the most destructive habits people have right now because it doesn't allow you to the joy of real learning.
Mm.
So those are the things that one must see in this fertile time in which COVID has given us the opportunity of a 3 billion person lockdown, in which you can do the inner work, in which you can talk to your families, in which you can let go of the news media that is giving you garbage left and right.
Right, right. Sit with it, understand your truth.
Work with your I am.
Work with the I am. And, I've also found that some friends, you can see them falling into fear, and then you can see them pulling themselves out of fear. And it's been quite amazing to watch the emotional aspects of everyone going through this, and choosing not to watch the news or when to watch the news is really, really important for your health. And
and the news media is going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and they're going to keep giving you back 2 weeks. We're going to be under lockdown 2 more weeks and 2 more weeks and 2 more weeks and 2 more weeks, and then they're going to say you got to be under a month, and then it's 2 more weeks, and it's going to go all the way well into September.
Yeah.
Okay. If you look at the curves, the graphs, the statistics that they're showing us, if there's a secondary infection, just like there was after the 1917 flu, the second one was worse than the first one, they cannot let up. That also means that it's going to destroy the economy.
Yes.
And there's going to be a series of attempts at the economic and business community to get everyone back to work early, just like China tried to do it. What do the Chinese people do? Nope, we're staying in our house.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put a gun to Chinese people backs and say, get out of your house and go back to work.
Right.
But
And
you can
now's a
make
good
them
time
stop
for people.
demonstrating.
Go ahead. Go ahead, David.
No, just a comment. But you can make them stop demonstrating.
Right. But there are new ways of demonstration that are going to come forward, and I am willing to say that the younger communities that are more technologically advantageous will begin to learn how to use the social media engines to create mass awareness and denial of service attacks on various systems to get their points heard.
Facebook has been stopping a few posts already with the M word.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I've heard you speak about the online activists. And so the online activists will bring attention to the systems that you're talking about, the medical system, the financial system.
But it'll be in a different way. It will not be the usual sign my petition that means nothing. It will not be the usual Facebook post with 10,000 shares. It'll be a website with all the data that people are directed to read and learn and educate on their own. And then it'll be learning how to teach your social media system that we can all leave right away. Guess what? We're all going to delete our accounts and stay off for 2 days, and then come back and activate our accounts for 2 days, and then delete our accounts for 2 days. That will destroy Facebook, that will destroy YouTube, that will destroy all of their predictive models on you. There are plenty of ways of getting those systems to pay attention to you, in which they will then tell their masters, hey, there's an internal revolt we can't stop.
I guess the knowledge of who and what to expose or to bring attention to, or education about, for instance, the financial system. Many people are not experts in economics. So we would have to, spell it out for everyone to understand.
I have to chime in there. Is it that many people aren't expert in economics, or most people don't think about it very much?
Both.
Because economics generally is, people only think about the economics and how it affects them. The macroeconomics, meaning the trading between nations, the business between nations. Microeconomics is that I go inside a store and I buy myself a candy bar. Okay. Now, people generally don't care about macroeconomics until such time as they walk inside that store and that candy bar is $25. Okay. And they wonder, how did it get there? And the guy who runs the store says, well, that's the price, that's the world market. Okay? And this is a problem. But when it comes to a health system, I will have to say that you actually have to hide the economics, because the reality is very horrifying. Because you can afford to live without a candy bar, but you can't afford to live without a ventilator if your respiratory system is failing. You see the difference, Joyce?
Yes.
One thing you have to hide, the other thing you don't have to so much. If gas prices go up or it goes down, nobody cares. They're going to pay a few cents extra. Okay? Until such time as you go to a hospital and it says, well, we can't exactly put you on a ventilator because you're kind of above that age limit, so you might die, and we don't have enough ventilators to go around. That's when economics hits home to you, because supply and demand is important. So I need to say this. People need to be a little bit more aware of how economics in the world affects them. There are a lot of people who deliberately do not educate themselves because it's just too much to think about. Okay, but when you're talking about economics in a health system, certain information deliberately has to be hidden from the public. You have health ministers in Canada buying political orders to release information. Okay, they're defying political orders from politicians to release information. And that's news, and that hit news a couple of days ago. That should theoretically never happen, but they have to. So a lot of the health system, the cogs and wheels of make it turn, some of it has to be hidden, because the reality can be quite horrifying. For those people who know the inside scoop in terms of how health systems run, we are horrified, which is why I generally tend to exercise a lot and eat properly, because I don't want to be at the mercy of any health system ever. Okay. And this is coming from somebody who worked in the administrative side of health, right, and the clinical side of health. I don't want to be at the mercy of a health system, because I know my life has a price tag on it. It does. The doctor may care about you, but your life has a price tag on it. And if I actually sit down and do the economics based on the jurisdiction that you live in, based on the medical facilities, I could tell you exactly how much your life is worth.
Yeah.
Okay? I could tell you how much it will cost to save your life and how much it will cost not to. That's the world that we are living in. And a lot of people, I do believe a lot of people are very misinformed. They live on the idea that health systems are based on compassion. Health systems, like any other commodity, is based on supply and demand.
Yes. Yes.
So I had to turn my video off here because I had an unstable thing. I want to add something else in, David. And can you talk about fiat currency and how that is actually affecting the health systems also?
Honestly, just hearing that term. So look, this is a fake idea, really. Okay, not that it affects, but you have a currency that's not really a real currency, is it? When you really think about it. So you have the idea that we have a health system that is running on a particular budget, and money is being pumped into the health system. Okay, I need to explain a lot of things here. Actually, I'll just start from the very basic. In order for a health system to run, if it is not privatized, government has to fund it. So far, we're good. Does everybody understand that? So
Yep.
if you put $1 billion into a health system, that's fine. But what you have seen in the recent years is that people are putting the promise of currency into a health system to make it run. That's never a good idea, because what the realities on the ground is that people who come into a health system, and this is once again COVID-19, the gift that keeps on giving, has shown that all your currency models, it doesn't matter what currency you're using, is useless when it comes to a real emergency. All the finance people and all the economics people are finding out that supply and demand at the end of the day is what actually runs a health system. So you say you have this currency that is based on an idea of a promise of something. No, that doesn't work, because when people want a service, they want a service, or they're going to die. The problem, the difference once again, and the reason why I'm a little bit passionate about this is that when it is that you are running a health system, you should have contingencies. That has been gotten rid of. There should be contingencies, and contingencies in terms of financing, contingencies in terms of infrastructure. Okay, you should have protocols in place for everything. All of these things have gone out the window. They've just gone out the window. And so we have a pandemic on our hands, and we have no way of financing it. So they're pulling financing out of the sky. Andrew, we spoke about this last time, didn't we?
Yes, we did. And we're going to bring an Emotep, a financial guy from South Africa, and we're going to go really in depth into this in another show.
You offer a stimulus package. Right now, the health systems are being overwhelmed. You have doctors and nurses, especially in the third world, and I've spoken to some of these people directly. You have people who are not going into work. They're afraid, because a doctor or a nurse is different from an human being. But how much money do you think you're going to be paying these people for the risk that they are posing? Let's talk about money here. If I pay a doctor or a nurse $12 an hour, okay, for 8 hours, they make $96 a day, correct?
Yep.
Just theoretically. Let's go with base numbers so that we don't have to do a lot of math. $10 an hour, 8 days, you make $80 a day, okay? All right. This virus has shown you that overtime is going to be necessary, or you have to have contingencies, okay? So we had a show about a week ago, a couple of weeks ago, where I said to you that a health system without any kind of contingency planning is a problem, because government has to pay these people. Government has budgeted to pay every nurse and every doctor $80 a day. When you go into overtime, depending on the rules of the labor codes of your country, you add more money to that bill. You don't have the money to pay the bill, so you have the idea of a promise of money coming, but you don't actually have the money, okay? So you can't pay your staff. So COVID-19 hit, and they weren't prepared because they had no idea of backup financing. So they have something called stimulus packages, and everybody listens to this concept and they figure, oh, well, they have stimulus. But a stimulus package does not mean I have a contingency. It means I'm creating money out of the air. Y'all understand what that means, right?
Yep. That's the black magic money system.
Right? It means I'm creating money out of the air. I have budgeted and made a budget. The budget is tight. There is no part of a budget nowadays that is, in case something goes wrong, like COVID-19 hits, you don't know. So you have to create money out of the air. You have to create the promise of money coming in through, okay? That's a problem. So now you have health systems breaking down. You have health systems breaking down, and when you run a health system based on economics, health should not be a commodity, is what my argument has always been. Health is not a commodity that you can trade on a market, but this is what has happened in a capitalist economy. Health, your life, your health, has a price tag attached to it. It does. Okay, let me tell you what, let me break it down for you guys so that you understand. I'm paying a doctor $80 a day. There are 5 doctors. I have a bill in that hospital of $400 a day. Agreed?
Yep.
I have a bill in that hospital for $400 a day. COVID-19 hits. These people have to work longer hours. So my 8-hour day turned into 16. You know how much money I'm spending, right? I'm now have an $800 bill. Okay? That I don't have $400 extra to put in. Okay? So I now have to create the stimulus package, which is like, poof, money will come. But I don't actually have the money. Okay? So the doctors will take $400 a day, and I say, in the future, I will give you this money. Okay, that doesn't motivate them to come out, because if I'm working at $80 a day, my life and the risk that I take coming into the hospital to treat a bunch of people who are sick, theoretically, in the minds of people, I understand what Cory said, that this is not something to be frightened of, but in the minds of people, the fear factor for $400, for $80 a day is not worth my life. So far, you guys are with me.
Yep.
So theoretically, I am now not going to go into work. Remember. So that reduces the amount of people that are at work, which means when somebody comes in, I am not there to take care of that person dies. Understood? That person's life is now worth $80. So far, were you with me? Your life is now worth $80 because I'm not there, because $80 is what I would have been paid. Your life is worth $80. I value my life. I don't think my life is worth $80 to risk. That's how it works. This is how it works. You could tell me about a stimulus package coming for me for overtime. Not only do I have to risk my life, but I have to risk my life for longer hours. That is not beneficial to me as a practitioner. This is not beneficial to me as a nurse or a doctor, unless I actually got into the profession because I really want people and save lives. A lot of people get into the profession based on that premise. However, after a few years, they begin to think, you know, I just want to get paid at the end of the year, at the end of the day, or at the end of the year. So people die. So people's lives become, the exact worth of the life is based on $80 a day. You come up with a stimulus package of money that is promised, which everybody has had the experience of knowing. Stimulus package means when this is over, somebody's going to have to pay for it. Somebody is going to have to pay for it. Okay, so your value of your life going in is $80. The value of your life going out is less than $80. You understand what I'm saying?
So many people just don't understand that all too often the bean counters have a formula, and that formula evaluates your life. Like a lot of the state workman's comp, if you lose a finger, you get this much. You lose an arm, you get this much. You die, your loved ones get this much. And I found an article, I think it was on Saturday, I'm looking for it now, how a major healthcare, I just found it, where they're slashing the pay of doctors during the middle of the pandemic because they know that they've screwed their economics. So I want to put the link here, and it's a here to be in the chat for everyone. Just 1 second here. And this is an example of how corporate people don't even care about their own doctors. Cutting the pay of doctors and nurses during the pandemic instead of expanding it.
Well, Andrew, they had to. They have a wage bill. Do you know what happens if this COVID-19 virus stops right now? You still have a huge bill.
Yes, a huge bill to pay that's based in fiat money that isn't backed by anything. It's just debt for the future.
And a lot of people are losing money. As I said earlier on, the pharmaceutical companies will lose money because they don't have a cure or they don't have a vaccine, which is why there's a race to make a vaccine. But that produces another health problems. That produces other health problems because theoretically, when you're testing a drug, you should wait at least a year to see what the effects of the drugs are long term. So if you're cutting that as a regulation, you're going to have a problem. And sometimes drugs come back more than a year. Huh?
That's right. Most of these most of these drug tests should be 5 years. That's what the standard rule is before it can go on market.
Yeah, but theoretically, at the minimum, it should theoretically be a year, because you are not gods. But that's beside the point. The fact is that they had to drop the doctors' wages and bills, and that is a problem. And I'll tell you why that is, because it does not motivate the practitioner to stay in practice. It does not motivate the practitioner to stay in practice. So people keep wondering, what is this economics thing that you keep harping about? Health and healthcare should not be a commodity. It shouldn't theoretically be a commodity. And it has been, and this has been debated. I always look at the debates in Congress with regard to healthcare in the US. It's hilarious, because you guys are really screwed, aren't you all out there?
Oh yeah. So screwed.
You guys are really screwed.
So screwed to the point where naturopaths and alternative holistic medicine people like Cory and Max have had to come together and create a business over 30 years just to educate people on how screwed up the business is. I want to bring Cory here and have him talk a little about the business and why he's been able to stay in business for so long.
I was just pondering that as David was talking. Primarily, I've stayed in business because I just love to live indoors, and I'm not asking for a whole lot more than that. There are a few of us left that genuinely care about somebody else. And I got my start back when I was 7 years old, and the medical community told my folks that my mother was not going to live to the end of the month. And my folks came up with the conclusion, if that's all they've got to offer, we're going somewhere else. And they went to a guy by the name of Jack LaLanne. He was a muscle guy, a juicer guy, naturopath. And while I was in the room with my folks, and he was telling my mother, Norma, there are some very simple things that could save your life. My folks were arguing over something which I don't remember what it was, but I stood up and said, how simple? And this man looked at me and said, as long as your folks will bring you, I will teach you something that you can do to help your mother. So with what little help I could do at 7, and what Jack LaLanne and a few other people did, we bought my mother another 29 years of life. It became important to me at that time that life was worth something other than David's excellent example there of $80 a day. Mom's life was worth something to me. At that time, I ended up having to take over cooking in the house because Mom could barely make it to the bathroom. There were times when I would come home from school that I would have to help her get back to bed because she couldn't make the trip both ways. It has always been more important to me to take care of my friends. And so far, I've been able to live indoors. There are times that it gets scary that it doesn't look like there's going to be enough to pay this bill or that bill. But my point of view is that there's a better record keeper, a better scorekeeper than me. Mm-hmm. And so I give to people all the time. Just recently, an example of that was we had a couple of hunters come from Detroit area and wanted trophy animals, and took the animal to a meat market and said, all we want is the head, throw the rest of it away. That particular client knows of my nature, and she brought about 200 pounds of meat. And then I took that 200 pounds of meat and gave it to somebody else. As long as we are valuing people's life on a dollar bill or something the equivalent, none of this is going to change. And from my ability, I cannot touch the world.
Let me step in here. Cory has set up a nonprofit. We are a health ministry, and for that reason, it keeps our costs down. Cory is a philanthropist. He likes to stay anonymous, and so we have had to twist his arm to keep record of these things so that we can legally be a health ministry. It's called a 508, and that allows us to educate people and also do research and development. And out of that, there is a great number of people that we help. We assess their situation, and we try not to be invasive in that. And then we actually provide services and products to help those people get through a tough time. And there's endless number of people that have come back and given more than what they have to help us out in return. We also have a wonderful map on the wall where it shows that we have now 36 countries that we've seen clients from in all 50 states. And so I just give Cory a minute here to recover and just tell people that he's the real thing.
So one of the things I had to learn, by my nature, I'm an introvert trying to behave like an extrovert. And it draws heavily on my energy to do that. I had to learn from my clients that a hug is medicine. And quite a number of times, the payment I get for what I've done is a hug. And as long as we are valuing life on a dollar bill, we can't change a whole lot. In Rapid City, I do my very best to work with everybody that comes in, even the ones that are afraid. The medication, the supplements, the elderberry doesn't make any difference. What you've got to do is you've got to take the fear out of their eyes. You've got to take the fear out of their heart so that they can continue to live. And unfortunately, the way that this system is set up is we only get rewarded when we ignore life and deal with numbers. So of the groups that I work with, I've been told that I can't be in practice until I'm seeing 20 people an hour. My first scheduled appointment with people is 2 hours. I talk to them, I listen to them, I hear where that they come from, because all of that should be healthcare. I got in front of the World Health Organization to try to help with the AIDS virus and testing. We got very close to allowing the EDS equipment, electrodermal equipment, as part of the test. The AMA came in and told the World Health Organization that if they followed the procedures that we were recommending, that they would withdraw all of their funding. So where did we end up? Back in South Dakota. We need to pay people when people are healthy, not when people are sick. That's how screwed up this system is.
Agreed. More than agreed.
And so I'm privileged to have a wife who understands my passion. And she worked extremely hard to keep me balanced, one, and to keep money coming in the door so that I can do what I love to do, which is help people where they live, give them a reason to live, take the fear out of their eyes. So yesterday I had a mom who was afraid to come to the office because she's heard all of this social distancing with two kids, which neither of the kids would be here if I hadn't have helped her in early stage pregnancy. But by the time she left, she was hugging her kids again. And I got a hug from all three of them, which tells me that we satisfied the fear issue. And sometimes it's done one person at a time.
The joy of medicine is still there for you. And we need to reinstill that to the rest of the medical community and begin to remove the bean counters and risk assessment managers from determining what medical care is, was, or ever will be.
I personally think that medicine should be handed down as an art form,
Yes,
not
absolutely.
as a big college. Yeah, we need to know how the body works. Absolutely. We need to know what the inside of the body looks like. We need to know what the viruses are, but the expertise needs to be handed down as an art form. And so I have a school and I've taught probably 250 people my take on how the lymphatic system works, and they can get results that traditional methods don't provide. The EDS equipment that I use gives me an opportunity to look at an individual, not as a herd, but as one person and what that one person needs in order to maintain their health. And yes, it needs to be brought back down to who was the guy on TV, Dr. Welby. They didn't choose that name by accident. We need the doctor that was on Gunsmoke. He was concerned about his people.
Yep.
Thanks for the opportunity to stand on this little soapbox.
It has been our pleasure to have you. And do you guys want to give information out how people can get a hold of you?
Max, you're better at that than I am.
You can email us at Cory, CORY .C @ as in alternative, med as in medical services, and S on the end.com. You're also welcome to call us here in the United States at 605-343-2682. And we're located in Rapid City, South Dakota. And you can find us on Facebook with Alt Med Services. We are currently working on a new website. So please note that our old website has an old address. The new address is 3645 Sturgis Road, Suite 200. And again, Rapid City, South Dakota, 57702. Please find us on Facebook. And also you can look up the old website if you care to find Cory's history, just know that the information is about 14 years old, and it's called lymphinfo.com. So thank you all for joining us, and we really appreciate the opportunity to share our hearts and our education and our knowledge with you. Thank you again.
So
Thank you.
kind of out of my comfort zone, and I really hate to admit it, but it is dollars that keeps even our office open. So if somebody has some desire to allow us to reach out to other people, we won't waste any of that.
Beautiful.
We do take donations, and we love volunteers, and we do our best to share the wealth, for sure.
Thank you. David, any last messages you'd like to share? You're muted.
Sorry. No, actually, that was actually quite beautiful, and I'll tell you why that is. It's very rare that you're going to find this kind of dedication to anything, which is why when you asked about if I knew anybody, I'm like, yeah, Max and Cory. These are the go-to people to go to. My last words would be to your audience, look, take care of yourselves, educate yourselves as much as you can. That would require time out of your day to read and learn stuff. But then what are you going to do? You're on lockdown, right? So this is the perfect time to educate yourselves and so on nutrition, how to protect yourself, digestion, learn the systems of the body, and just generally take care of yourself. Also take care of your mental health as well. There's an element to this. So if you are locked down with somebody, as soon as this broadcast is over, go get a hug. Like as soon as it's over. Okay? And keep your 5 hugs a day prescription. This is my prescription for you guys. And no, look, guys, take care of each other. Okay? I suppose that's what I have to say on my side. And Max and Cory, really, thank you guys for turning out. I gave you a really short notice. I apologize for that, but I've had a lot of fun on this broadcast.
Me too.
Same here.
Now, yes. Thank you guys for coming in, and we're going to have you guys back on at another point in time. And we're going to go, because as this coronavirus gets crazier and crazier and crazier, we want to bring a sense of peace to everyone and have a different sense. So we're going to have you guys back on. I will be back on this coming Thursday for another Adventure into Reality call-in show at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Already, everyone, will catch you this coming Thursday for our next show. All right, Robert, take us away.
Yep.
Each different bubble of reality is true. A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma. Nudge, nudge. It's the Holy Grail. Improvise. Mysterious. It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.